Hi, I'm Darcy Benencosa, and I'm here to make all your metering for window light dreams come true. That's right, I've taken a lot of information about how to shoot and meter film for window light and put it in this comprehensive, easy to understand guide. And the beautiful part, I have lots and lots of visuals. The interesting thing about shooting for window light is you actually have to meter very differently, actually oppositely than you would meter if you were shooting outside or shooting in a place that has a lot of even light. The thing about window light, there's a lot of light that comes through and hits our model in one place. And so we get to really decide as the creators here, how moody do we want to take it? How bright and airy do we want to get? And I remember when I was first starting out shooting for window light, I was always overexposing too much, and thus I was washing out all of my subjects. And I was overexposing because when I shoot outside with film, and I'm a Fuji 400H shooter, when I shoot outside, I am always metering for the shadows and overexposing like crazy. When I would come inside, because it was either rainy or I was photographing a bride getting ready, I was always overexposing my window light exposures. So I worked really diligently, did a lot of test shoots, and made sure I understood where the sweet spot is so that you're not washing out the window, you're not washing out the person. And I've found the sweet spot for aperture and for shutter speed. But before we get into that, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of a shoot I did all by, you guessed it, one window. Here is our lovely model, Brooke, and the film scans that you see are straight scans. I did nothing to them, and I asked the lab to not overcorrect them. So I had these negatives scanned in two ways. One, untouched, so we could see the true reading of what I'm getting in camera, and then I had them rescanned as the lab would touch them up. The cool thing about doing it this way and really diving in deep into what the scans look like is you can see the full range that you have when shooting film, how much the lab can help, how much you can overexpose or underexpose before you start to lose a lot of the detail. And the cool thing about film is you can do it so much better than digital. Digital, I feel, especially with window light, just washes everyone out. It really has a hard time maintaining the details, and it doesn't look as pretty as this one does. So let's dive into the film scans and take a look. So here is scan number 1. I want to toggle it back and forth with what the lab did and what the straight scan was. Here's the straight scan, and here's what the lab did. So the lab warmed it up a little bit and brightened it up just a little bit. I personally like the straight scan better than what the lab did. I think it's a little bit cooler and more understated, which tends to be in alignment with my work. When we move on to number 2, we've got the straight scan. This was shot at 2.8 at a 30th shutter speed. It wasn't a super sunny day in New York. It was okay, but it wasn't incredibly sunny. There's not a ton of light coming on her. And here's what the lab did. So again, here's my straight scan, and here's how the lab corrected it. It's really, really close, but again, I think I like mine better because it keeps the highlights a little bit more true. We can move on. Here's Brooke standing by the window, and I shot this again, 2.8 at a 30th, and then I went up to 125 at 2.0. So it's really just a stop more. Image number 4, we've got 2.0 at 125th. And then here's 2.8 at a 60th, which actually I think is the sweet spot, is 125 or 60th at 2.8. Now, here is untouched 500. Okay, so I went really extreme in the opposite direction. So we have 2.8 at a 30th, and now here I've jumped to 2.8 at 500 shutter speed. Now, it looks really gross and kind of muddy here. Now, here's the lab version. Here's what the lab would have delivered to me, and I actually really like it. So you can see they made the blacks really rich. They did that by really upping the contrast. And I actually really love how dark and moody this shot is. Now the basic scan, it's not that pretty, right? It's really kind of noisy and ugh. But what the lab did is beautiful. So that's 500th. So do you see the range you can go on film? You can shoot it at a 30th of a second or a 500th of a second, and you get two very different emotions in the image. Here's another one of Brooke facing the window, and it is dark and moody as well. It's also shot at 500th at 2.8. Now, I didn't get this one with what the lab would have delivered, but it would have been darker like the other one. I actually kind of like this. I think I would have upped the contrast a little bit more, but this is the straight scan. Look how true this is, and look how you can see the reflection in the glass. You can see her lips reflected. Most of the time when you overexpose, you're going to lose all that kind of detail. So if you want to take some more pensive portraits, I would highly suggest you don't overexpose with window light. Now, where am I holding the meter? Well, I'm holding the meter right at the highlight of where the sun is hitting her the most, and I am not overexposing it. Meaning, on a shot like this, I am not metering by her neck. I'm metering right at her face, right at the front of her face, bulb out, Fuji 400H. And yes, I'm still shooting it at 200th. I'm still metering at 200 because that's what I always do, but I'm not overexposing it in any other way. So this is still a little overexposed because I always meter my Fuji at 200. So let's see how different the window light can get and how much she gets blown out the lower the shutter speed. So here is 2.0 at a 60th. Here's 2.8 at a 60th. So that's a one stop difference. With photo number 10, we've got 2.8 at a 60th, and I wanted to show you so you can see with a straight scan, her face is really, really blown out. Here's how much the lab could bring it back. See that? They bring it back just enough to reclaim some of those details, and that's about the range of it. So that's about a stop or two that they were able to bring back, but I still think it loses some of its magic by being this overexposed. Again, you take it back to 500 at 2.8 and you see what the vast difference is between 500 of a second and a 60th. Again, here is a sweet spot, I think, for this image. I still think 500 is a little too underexposed. What I found when I had her right by the window, I really liked 1/25th to 250 at 2.8. Again, I'm holding the light meter up straight where the light is hitting her. I am not trying to meter for the shadows. And here is how the lab fixed that portrait. You can see with the blacks, they really make them pop and bring out those beautiful highlights. Look how awesome her arms look. Way to go, Brooke. So here's picture 13, 14, 15, all shot 2/50th at 2.8. And then with 17, I raise it a stop and I put her in the window. And I think this is too overexposed. I think it really needed to stay at 2/50th, but I wanted you to see what one stop overexposed would look like. Again, when she turns her face in towards me and not out towards the light, I actually think this one looks pretty good. This is 1/25th at 2.8. And when you get close up to her in that window light, 1/25th, 2.8, bam. Look how beautiful that image is. I shot several at 2.8 at 1/25th because I knew that was the sweet spot. Now we're going to go and shoot Brooke from behind. So instead of shooting in alignment with the window, I'm going to come behind her and shoot her silhouette in the window. When you're doing that, and I want more of the body that's away from the window light to be exposed, then I took this all the way down to a 30th of a second at 2.8. Again, 30th at 2.8, and then here's a 60th at 2.8. So that was right next to the window. Let's pull Brooke away from the window and set her just off the side. And there you have it, my simple guide for shooting window light. I just want to remind you, I love window light. I use it in 80% of my indoor shoots. The key to remember with window light is it's all about where you decide to stand. If you put the subject right next to the window and photograph her face with the window light coming onto her face, you get sharp, directive, sometimes harsh, but really intense light that can make a portrait truly pop. It can bring attention to detail. It can draw the eye right there while the light falls off of the subject and goes into darkness. You can photograph it for backlight to create strong silhouettes. You can move the subject about 2 or 3 feet away from the window and create this soft, beautiful, light portrait. The cool thing about window light is a couple of inches makes a huge difference. And the best thing about shooting window light with film is that film will give you a more dynamic range than digital that I've found. It doesn't lose as many details, and it allows you to brighten up a photo if you're a couple of feet away from the window to create a very light, beautiful subject. Or you can put your subject right next to the window and create a dark and moody portrait. I find the diversity of film next to window light to be one of the most exciting things and one of the reasons I still shoot film in a digital world, because film with window light gives you all that you need to create a range of colors, a range of emotions, and a range of quality work that will give depth to your work, excitement to your soul, and satisfaction to your bank account now that you don't have to waste any more film getting it right. Remember, 60th to 125th to 250th are my go-to shutter speeds for window light. And let me know if you have any questions. I hope this training was helpful. Thank you so much for joining me here on how to shoot a meter film for window light like a ninja.